Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the VoiceOver Roadmap podcast. Today is a special episode because we have a guest co-host, J.Michael Collins. J.Michael is a voiceover talent with over 20 years experience as a professional voiceover actor. He has worked with some of the biggest companies, brands, sports leagues, organizations on the planet, and in addition to his work in the classic agency-based world of voiceover, J.Michael has also established himself as a leading authority and top-earning talent on online marketplace sites and P2P sites. And he's also become recognized as an industry-leading coach and demo producer as well. He was the winner of the 2016 Voice Arts Awards for Outstanding Radio Commercial, Outstanding Political Announcement, and was also the producer of 2016's Outstanding Narration Demo Reel. We had a really great episode. J.Michael provided a lot of really great information in this episode about online casting and a lot of other things related to VO, so I think there is a ton of value in this episode. As with every episode, we answered 3 questions: a performance question, an audio question, and a business question. For our performance question, we talked a little bit about script preparation. For our audio question, we were discussing delivering raw audio versus doing some sort of post-production beforehand. And for our business question, we talked a little bit about marketing and developing a system for your marketing efforts as a voiceover talent. And if you'd like to submit a question for a future episode of the show, you can do that at voiceoverroadmap.com/questions. So feel free to go over there and submit as many questions as you'd like, and they might be selected for a future episode. Also, you can check out the show notes for today's episode at voiceoverroadmap.com/002. And that's where you will find links to everything that we go over in the episode and just more information. And if you like the show and you get some good information and value out of it, I would love it if you could subscribe and review the show on iTunes. That goes a long way in getting the show out there and making sure more people can find it and hear it. So here is episode 2 with J.Michael Collins. Hey, J.Michael, how's it going?
Well, it's going, man. I'm happy to be here and happy to be talking to all of your guests on your podcast. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. So before we get into our audience questions for this episode, I just kind of wanted to speak with you a little bit about your VO history. I'm sure some people in the audience are already familiar with you, but for those who aren't, I'd like to just, sort of introduce you a bit and talk about your history and your background in voiceover. So to start, can you just speak a little bit about your very beginnings and how you first got into voiceover?
Well, I'm probably one of the rare people that you're going to meet in this business who's actually never done anything else. This has been my career since basically I was a teenager. I started in radio when I was 15 years old, just by chance. I kind of inherited a radio show from a person who had retired after the station was sold, and there was a year-long period of waiting for the sale to go through, even though it had already been confirmed. So they left, and I got to do that show. It was actually local business news talk, and it mostly just reading copy off the Bloomberg Wire. But I started doing VO for some of the station sponsors, and that job lasted for about a year. I was doing this after school drive time, 5 to 7. Would go in with my briefcase, and everybody looked at me like, "What is this kid doing here?" But started doing VO. I mean, they weren't paying me a lot to do the radio stuff, so I started doing a little VO for the sponsors. Got paid a little bit to do that back then. And then when that job was done, I was able to get a sports talk show with Sporting News Radio affiliate, and again started doing the same thing, VO for station sponsors. Was getting hired by some of the people who had done VO with my former station, and got my first agent. And before I knew it, I was getting out of college, and the choice was go to law school and spend a whole bunch of money and possibly get into debt, or all of a sudden I'm 21 years old or whatever it was, and I'm making, I wasn't making a fortune, but I was making a small legitimate living doing VO. Right. And it's, so my family thought I was nuts, but I said, I'm going to see if this works. And lo and behold, it turned into a career. And it really got firing. I went about 10 years where it was just building and, a lot of all agency work. I was, but that back then we were called in to do auditions, either in studios or in casting directors' offices or in the agency office, whatever it may be. And just, you book the work that you book through your agents. And then with the advent of do-it-yourself voiceover at home, online casting, agency work going to being much less location specific, the business just started to grow. And after about 10 years, it went from being, a comfortable reasonable middle class living to something more, and it's been a heck of a ride. So
Wow. Yeah.
I'm blessed and lucky to be here and to get to do this every day. It sure beats digging ditches.
Yeah. So early on, it was pretty much all agency based. That's how you were getting work. And then, as the industry changed.
Yeah. I mean, I joke with my wife that, back before she met me, it was really, I played a lot of golf.
Uh-huh.
And would go in when summoned, and
Sure,
yeah,
yeah.
and I mean, I was in the DC area most of that time and wasn't making a fortune because I wasn't in New York, wasn't in LA, but there was enough work to make a decent living out of it.
Right.
But no, I mean, I worked. I mean, there were weeks I'd work 5 or 10 hours and then just be on the golf course a lot. It was not bad, but again, it wasn't as fulfilling as what I do now, which is really just every single day.
Much more full time, right?
Yeah, nonstop.
Yeah, right. So are there any specific highlights that stand out to you from, the course of your entire VO career, be it a specific job that you were really, excited about booking or just some sort of milestone achievement that you hit? Is there anything that sort of jumps, to the front of your mind?
It's my least favorite question in the world because, as anybody knows, with working talent these days, if you're doing a lot of stuff, it's like, what did I do yesterday?
Yeah,
but it's no, I mean, some of the things I think of, in terms of jobs. Again, going back in time as the memory gets fuzzy. More recently, was the voice for Eric Clapton's newest album.
Oh, that's cool.
Which
that's
was
really
pretty
cool.
All the national TV and radio on that. I did the dictionary back in 2011, the American Heritage Dictionary for online and e-learning use, which was 220,000 words, just the word entries. Thank God, not all of the definitions, or that would have taken the better part of 6 months. But
yeah, man, I can imagine.
I think
huge.
For me, kind of the way that I've tracked my career. Has been kind of looking at income milestones a little bit, and I'm not going to go into specific numbers, but I remember the first time I broke 6 figures, which was 8 or 9 years into my career, and that was pretty cool. That validated my choices, made me feel like I'd made the right decision, and it gave me the drive, I think, to not be on the golf course as much and to take matters into my own hands, because all of a sudden it's like, okay, this isn't just a basic living. I can actually make something really interesting out of this and treat it more like a business. And so that was an interesting moment. And it's been an incredible ride. And I did something for Audi today, and it's just every time, it wasn't a huge job, corporate narration gig. But it's just cool every time I get to do something for a client that's a brand that I recognize, or, Audi's actually the car that we have here. And it's like, not only am I a spokesman now, I'm also a client. That's the old Ron Popeil thing, right?
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's fun. It's a career. Don't get me wrong. It's hard work. I think we all know that.
Absolutely.
But it is. It's a fun ride, especially when it starts to move for you.
Yeah. And it's cool. It's cool to see some of these, these scripts and the copy of a commercial that's upcoming and stuff beforehand, especially like you said, if it's a brand that you really like and that you're into, it's just fun to see that. I do a lot of like techie stuff, I guess, having a younger voice, I get a lot of like, upcoming apps and things like that. So sometimes it's cool just to hear about these new products before they're coming out. So it's fun just to read the scripts, let alone, perform it and do the voiceovers.
Well, and it's the creative side of it too, which is, seeing the ideas that, some of the writers have and some of the creatives have on the production side.
Yeah.
And then being able to bring them to life with your voice. I'm not a big animation and character guy. And the thrill that they get when Bob Bergen does Porky Pig or something like that, that's an incredible thing. But I think for those of us who do commercials, who do promo work, who do a lot of narration work, it's the same feeling when we see a script that's really, really funny. And then when we book that script, especially if we've nailed the read and it's something that we're going to see on TV and hear on the radio, and that you're actually bringing joy to people with something that otherwise would be boring retail nonsense. It's a cool feeling to bring something like that to life and to give it form.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I have a couple of my own questions for you before we get into the audience questions. So I know that you are an authority on online casting, and we've already talked a little bit about it. But in today's current landscape of online casting, there's tons of talent on these sites, in all experience levels. There's amateur talent to very, very experienced talent and everything in between. So do you have any sort of go-to tips or anything that you think, talent who are on these sites can do to sort of stand out from the pack, be it something, for their profiles or in the way that they actually utilize the sites?
Well, of course, it's a timely conversation because we're in a period of incredible flux in the online casting side of the business, with Voices having acquired VoiceBank recently, and kind of the uproar that's created within the talent community. So, I think first and foremost, and I'm not going to deep dive on that here. You guys have read my articles and seen my comments on that, but it's up to you to choose where you work, and I think that's a decision everybody has to make on their own and for their own reasons. In terms of how to use these sites successfully, whichever ones that you may be on, the first is the old adage, which is be amazing. First and foremost, the people who book on these sites, there are some secrets, and I'll talk about a couple of them. But at the end of the day, it's talent. The people who you see booking every single day online are the same people who you see booking every single day through their agents, and then through, actually out there hustling with production companies and ad agencies and building their own leads. It's because they have had the coaching, they've had the training, they've got the natural ability, and that shouldn't be discounted either. To give the reads that are going to book, and to do it consistently. I think one of the things that gets lost sometimes is all of this business is a numbers game. Whether you're booking through agencies or doing your own cold calling and marketing, or you're working on online casting sites, it's all a question of what your booking ratio or success ratio in terms of gaining hot leads is to the time and the auditions that you put in. And if you're going to have a ratio that is going to be effective, you need to be performing at a consistently high level. Do we all lay the occasional egg? I'm sure I do. Okay, but I do know that when I get in front of my microphone, I always tell my students, be confident. Or be humble with your clients. Be polite with your clients. Be customer service oriented with your clients. But when you're in front of your mic, I want you to be an arrogant SOB. I want you to believe that you are the greatest thing since Don LaFontaine or Randy Thomas or anybody else out there who you admire. Because and I hate to use golf analogies, which everybody doesn't relate to, but I'm a golfer, and when I stand there at the tee box and I'm thinking about that shot, if I think too long or I hesitate, I'm going to kill a duck. And I've seen that happen. It's horrible, but
that's a good analogy. I get that analogy.
The feathers are going to fly. But if I believe that I'm going to hit it right down the middle 300 yards, I usually do. And this is the same thing. You've got to have the training, you've got to have the skill set, but you've also got to believe that you can deliver the read. Because if you're only hitting half the time, your booking ratio is going to be far less than it would be if you were connecting 9 times out of 10. So. Make sure that you have the goods first and foremost. But in terms of, what are some of the secrets? Audition quantity for online casting is very important. It is a numbers game. The good news is that, I cast off of these sites sometimes, and I can tell you that 40% of the people who audition on online casting sites disqualify themselves immediately for technical reasons. Either the acoustics are poor, the audio's bad, there's a dog in the background, whatever it may be. You can sound like Joe Cipriano or Tara Strong. It doesn't matter if you can't give me quality audio. I'm done within 5 seconds of pressing play. So that's 40% out the door. Another 40% disqualify themselves immediately because they stink and they shouldn't be doing this. And maybe their mama told them they had a good voice, but it's an amateur plugging in a Blue Yeti and hoping for the best. If you're not in that group of people who don't have your technical ducks in a row or don't have your training and skill set in a row, if you are somebody who has taken the time to do it the right way and to present a marketable product. The good news is that when people tell you that the market is oversaturated with talent, generally speaking, they're wrong. Now, if you're in LA or New York and you're competing with the agency side of the business and you're trying to get into that game, they're right. Okay, there is more quality talent in those markets than there are agency spots to be filled, and the competition out there is incredible. But if you're in the great middle of the country doing non-union work, or even if you're going after non-union work that you're converting to union work, but using online sites or again, your own devices to find your clients, there is more work out there than there is quality talent to do it. There are hundreds of thousands of people probably calling themselves voice talent, but there are only maybe 5 to 10,000 people in North America who can do this job on a professional level and who are making a full-time living doing it. If you're
that's a good point.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're one of those people, the good news is if you're working online, you're not really competing against 100 people for each job. You're only competing against 15 or 20 serious professionals for each job. That's the good news, but it's also the bad news because you're competing against 15 or 20 serious professionals, often including myself and Michael, right? And you too.
Yep. I'm on there.
for the jobs that are on those sites. So you got to bring your A game. And I know I run at the mouth here, but I'll give you one more analogy, and I call it the Cheesecake Factory analogy. And far be it for a fat guy like me to make a food analogy, but one of the things that I think of, have you ever been to the Cheesecake Factory? Michael, have you ever been to the Cheesecake Factory?
Once, a long time ago. It's been a long time.
If you remember your trip, they have like 4,365 things on the menu. Okay. And so if you are a T-bone steak and you are a grass-fed, beer-fed Kobe T-bone, you're as good a steak as you possibly can be. That's great. But 93% of the people coming into the restaurant don't want steak. It doesn't matter how good you are. They don't want steak. That's the nature of our business. I say this not to brag, but I book about 5 or 6 jobs a day. And for me, at this point, between repeat business and new clients that I bring in, it's not hard to bring those jobs in the door anymore. But 93% of the people who hear me say, nah, that's not what I'm looking for. That's the nature of our business. So what that means is you've got to be on as many menus as possible so that when somebody walks in the door hankering for a steak, you're front and center with a quality audition and you're a viable candidate. So you got to get volume is important. If you're not doing at least 20 auditions a day on online casting sites, or maybe a better way to put this is if you're not bringing in at least 20 leads per day, whether it's online casting auditions that you're doing, agency auditions that you're doing, or firm contacts that you're making with production companies and ad agencies, it's very hard to build a business in voiceover that's going to be a sustainable income. You've got to put in the legwork, and some of the people who book massive volumes of work online, if you look at Joe Zija, if you look at David Kaplan, if you look at Amy Weiss or Brad Ziffer, these are people who are doing 30, 40, 50, 70 auditions. I've seen David Kaplan get up from lunch at Del Frisco's in New York and go to the bathroom to do an audition on his phone because he just can't help himself. I love David to death, but he's an animal. I mean, the guy works like an animal. But there's a reason he books 7 or 8 jobs a day off of these sites.
Exactly.
It's because he puts the legwork in. So you got to do the legwork. Have good demos. Make sure that you present well. And understand the mechanics of the site. Study as much as you possibly can. But volume and quality, those two things will define whether or not you're successful online.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree. I've always thought of it as a numbers game too. In general, when it comes to just auditioning and marketing yourself, but especially on online casting sites. I've heard varying opinions in terms of how much time and how much effort you should put into each audition. Obviously, you don't want to rush through it and sacrifice quality in, an effort just to do 20, 30, 40 auditions a day. But I think you could go too far in the other direction if you're spending, an hour to do an audition. And if that's the case, I think, some of that time probably could have been spent better doing other things.
Well, think of it also about in terms of what the audition is. Okay, if you have an audition from one of your agents for a major national campaign, by all means take 30 minutes and 40 minutes and make sure it's flawless. Okay, if you find something online that's going to be ongoing, recurring work and could be thousands and thousands of dollars. Again, by all means, if you want to take 15, 20 minutes, now remember, getting in early, especially online, is helpful. But if you want to take 15, 20 minutes, that's fine. If it's your, bog standard $300 corporate narration or explainer video, if you're taking much more than 10 minutes on one of those, you're costing yourself opportunity to do others and to be heard by somebody who might be looking for steak.
Yep. Yeah, you pretty much answered my next question, which was going to be, what sort of approach do you recommend taking to auditioning? You can sort of be on one end of the scale where you audition for everything that's, in the sphere of your skill set. If it's a perfect match or if it's just close, you audition. Or you can go the total opposite direction and you're super selective. And the job description has to be talking about me specifically. Otherwise, I'm not auditioning. So it sounds like you sort of lean towards pretty much everything that's a realistic, semi-realistic possibility you're going to audition for. Is that something that you'd recommend?
I would kind of split the difference a little bit. You don't want to take such a scattershot approach that you're wasting your time.
Right.
So know what you can do and know
yourself. Yeah.
No. I know if I see any two of the following words in a spec. Urban, millennial, hip, youthful. Any two of those, I will probably pass. Know who you are. If you sound 18 to 25 and you see epic, powerful, authoritative movie trailer, some of the keywords that they're giving you, then that's probably not for you. But so don't go scattershot. On the other hand, if you're just dialing in on perfect fits, unless you have a very, very specific sound where that's really going to be appropriate,
that's a good point.
You're probably leaving some money on the table.
Yeah. Because I've been surprised sometimes, many times by auditions that I've done where I've thought, yeah, okay, I'll take a shot at it. It's not obviously something that's perfect for me, but it's also not like, for me, my keywords, like when I see James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman references, right, those I pass on because it's just not me. But, there's those balancing act, there's those middle ground ones. And plenty of times I've auditioned and then you get the job and it's like, oh, wow. All right, great. And then you find out it's also because when somebody posts a job and they put some descriptive adjectives or they start to write it, you get an idea in your head when you read that of what they're looking for, but it might not be 100%. What they're looking for. It's sometimes hard to gauge exactly what somebody means when they describe something or say something a certain way. So if you feel like, this is a possibility, I think then it's, a good idea to take a shot at it. Again, keeping in mind that you're not going to take an hour shot at it or a half hour shot at it. You're going to spend an appropriate amount of time to get the audition in and, move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Then my final question for you, we also sort of touched on briefly. Speed of submitting an audition is something that me personally, I've sort of gone back and forth on. And I've, as these voices.com, other big casting sites have changed the way they work, I think speed of auditioning has sort of changed in its effectiveness over time. In the current landscape, in the current way that these sites work, do you still think that getting an audition in quickly plays a big role in your success and in landing a job?
It plays a role.
Okay.
And I do think it is one of the elements that is important. The reason for this, there is a phenomenon in casting. And again, I sit on that side of the glass with some frequency. In fact, I'm usually casting at least a job or two a week for my own clients. And there's absolutely a bias in favor of quality auditions that are heard earlier. It's a psychological thing. And basically the reason for that is, let's use an online casting site as an example. If I'm on Voice 123 and there are 80 auditions, okay, and most people don't listen to the auditions as they're coming in, but if they are, then that's even more of a compelling reason for you to be as early as you can be. But if it's a normal buyer who's going to wait until 20, 30, maybe till all the 50 or 60 or 70 they want show up before they start listening, we tend to go down the list just top to bottom, okay? Unless we know people and we're specifically looking for people, usually we're going to go down just in the way that they're presented. And on it's interesting between the sites. On Voice 123, they are presented strictly in the order they come in. On Voices.com, they're presented in order of the voice match score, and then in the order that they come in based on voice match. Right. And then on Bidalgo, they're actually presented in reverse order that they come in. So the most recent submission is at the top. So on Bidalgo, if a client is taking them all in one chunk, the guy who came in first is going to be last, and so the advantage is obviated there. So on Bidalgo, it matters a little bit less. It's a bit more of a crapshoot as to where you're heard, depending on whether or not that client's listening to everything that comes in. But on the other two sites, it is often just in the order that you appear. And so if I'm going down the list on Voice 123, and I get to, the 5th, 6th, 7th audition, and I hear somebody I like, Well, it doesn't mean that person's going to book the job, but what it means is that they then become the benchmark against whom I compare everybody else. And,
Right.
if you're number 65, by the time I get to number 65, I've probably heard 5 auditions I like. And at that point, you have to be not just as good as, but you've got to be better than all of those 5 if you want to book. Whereas if you had given me the very same read and you had been the first person I liked, you might have booked with the same read at number 5 that you didn't book with at number 65 because nobody beat you out. Whereas at 65, you didn't beat out the person who was my benchmark, even though you might have been just as good.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true.
And I've seen this. I've seen this actually happen live outside of online casting. Back at the Midwest Voiceover Conference, when that was still going on a couple of years ago, I was casting a job there. It was for Volkswagen or BMW, one of the car companies, e-learning. And we lined up all of the female talent on one side of the room and all of the male talent on the other side of the room. I didn't judge because I had a lot of my students there, so I recused myself and had some of the other presenters judge. But in the male case, it was the very first person who read that got it. The female case, I think it was like the 4th person out of 30 or so on each side. So that bias is real. Getting in early is an advantage.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've also cast some projects on voices.com, and I know that there is the option to sort of change the sort order, in terms of how they're presented top to bottom. But I think, honestly, most clients who go on there either won't be aware of that or just won't do that. They'll just look at it how it is, which by default is that voice match score. And then
people are lazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's, if they have a list of talent in front of them, it's why do they care really to change the sort order? It's like, here's the people who auditioned. I'm going to listen to them. There they are. They're in front of me. So yeah. So, okay. So that's good to know. Cause I've sort of flip-flopped on, just me personally in terms of thinking, well, should I just save these and do them all at the end of the day? Or should I really, if it's a great audition, should I sort of get on this right now? And I have started to lean towards the side of, I think it's definitely a benefit to be really as quick as possible. Obviously not sacrifice quality, but
at this point, even when I'm working throughout my day, I've got my inbox open. And whether it's agents or production companies whose rosters I'm on or online casting sites, when an audition comes in, I just, unless I'm actually in a session, I take a brief look and just look at the number. And if it's a number that's interesting to me, I will stop what I'm doing and I will go ahead and do that audition just so I can be the first person in if I have the time to do that at that moment. So I'm always watching them. Yeah,
same. I got my inbox open. I got the alerts on my phone, so I'll hear that little chime go off. Unless I'm recording, obviously. Then I'll put it on silent. But yeah, all right, that's all really great info. Thank you so much for that. So before we jump into our audience questions, I just want to talk a little bit about what you have coming up. So you have an upcoming live workshop tour, and you're going to be hitting 4 different cities. So you're going to first be in Washington, D.C. on October the 20th, then Los Angeles on October the 23rd, Boston on October 30th, and Miami on November the 1st. So can you just talk a little bit about what that workshop is going to be like, what kind of stuff you're going to go over, what kind of talent it's for, a little bit, just give us a little overview of it.
Well, the workshop content is going to be the same in all 4 locations. This is building upon a workshop I did in Las Vegas back in June this year, which was an absolute blast. And we're going to focus on being real. We're going to focus on being authentic, on being conversational, on building characters for commercial reads. We may throw a little e-learning in there as well. We're going to teach everybody how to act a little bit more and to be more of a voice actor as opposed to a voiceover. I think there's so many talent these days who struggle with connecting with copy and bringing it to life. And one of the things I've really come to specialize in as a coach over the years is developing methods for creating characters for each piece of copy that you get. I'm a psychiatrist's nightmare of 100 different characters living in my head at any given time. I can go in here and pluck, Bill the retired cop, or Joe the plumber, or Steve the guy behind the counter at McDonald's, whatever it may be, and inhabit that person's soul for 30 seconds or 60 seconds as I deliver a piece of copy and completely forget that I'm J.Michael Collins. In fact, that's one of the lines I use often when I coach is I tell people, I've never done a read as J.Michael Collins. When I'm doing a read, I'm anybody but me, because if you're you, then you're just a voiceover person. And nobody wants to hear just a voiceover person. They want to hear somebody that they connect with, somebody that they identify with, and somebody who they relate to. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're doing these at some absolutely top hotels in these different locations. It's going to be 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in each location, and we'll break for lunch at noon, and lunch is fully catered and included, and then from 1 to 4 we continue. I'm planning to bring some special guests. In Vegas, Randy Thomas joined us to talk about imaging and live announce and her career, and just answer any questions, especially about the union side of things and agency work, and she came from 4 to 5, and then people who want to join for dinner will go out and have dinner afterwards. So we'll
Nice.
see who the special guests are, and if anybody is listening who knows me well, they know I can find a good restaurant, and it will be an enjoyable experience.
Awesome. And if people want to get some more info or sign up, where can they go to get all that?
You can contact me directly at jmichael@jmcvoiceover.com, or you can call 202-738-1151.
Awesome. And then, as you mentioned, you're also a coach and you do some demo production. How do you do that? Do you do coaching in person? Do you do it over Skype? Both? What's the situation for that?
Well, as most people know, I'm in Luxembourg most of the time these days, so I don't get to do as much coaching in person as I would like, which is one of the reasons I'm doing the workshops, because I really do just love being in the room with folks and being able to connect live. But we live in the era of easy free video conferencing, which is a miracle for coaching. And so I like Zoom in particular is my favorite, which is one of the ways that we're recording this now. And so I do video coaching over Zoom, and really I coach just about every topic out there except for animation and video games, and also I don't focus on audiobooks very much, but anything else is fair game. Demo production is something that has become a big part of my business over the past few years in particular. We were really thrilled last year, myself and I've got a production team behind me that audio engineering masters who just do absolutely incredible work. Once we get the direction and the scripting done and we get the reads done, then I go to work with my team, and we're producing stuff right now that I think is some of the best that's out there. Last year we were very honored to win the Voice Arts Award for Best Narration Demo for Susan Bernard and her TV narration demo.
Oh, wow.
And,
congrats.
We're crossing our fingers for more this year, so we'll see.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, so let's jump into our audience questions for this week. So our first question will be a performance question, and this week's question comes from Tim, and Tim asks, what kind of script preparation should I do before recording an audition or project? How many times should I read it? What kind of notes or markings should I make? What research should I do, etc.? And how long should be spent on each audition? Yeah, it's a great question. We touched a little bit on this, but I'll let you take it.
No, it's a really good question, and I think again it goes back to the answer of it depends. It depends what the job is and how much time you're going to take on it. So if we address it, vis-a-vis the methods that we talked about earlier, if it's that agency audition for a big national campaign, take your time. In terms of script preparation, review the script meticulously, mark it up in the places where you think you need to be breathing, the places where you want to put emphasis, places where you may want to take chances. And I by the way, that's something that I don't think gets talked about quite enough, is the importance of, especially in commercial auditions these days, taking chances. If you are auditioning for a sophisticated creative, by which I mean a casting director, an agent, a production company, an ad agency, a buyer who is in this business on a daily basis and who's making hiring decisions in voiceover, ad-libbing, taking some risks, going a little outside the box. Okay, do two. If you want to do a vanilla take, then do 2 takes, okay? But doing something unexpected, I can't tell you how often I'm hiring for commercial work, and the person who I wind up booking or recommending to the client is the person who is just a little crazy. And it's because I know that even if they go a little too far, I can probably bring them back to where I want them to be. Whereas the person who doesn't go there, sometimes I wonder if I can get them there.
It's harder to
so
push.
make those notes and look for something in the script that you really want to take a risk on. And again, like I said, if you're not sure, maybe do 2 takes and give them one that you think is out of the VO Academy textbook. But give them one that's interesting as well. In terms of research, really, if there's a product name that you don't know how to pronounce, if there's a word that you're not familiar with or that you don't know how to pronounce, individual names, unless it's somebody prominent that you're not sure of. In fact, speaking of demos, we do political demos, and we've been putting Kamala Harris spots on demos recently because she's somebody who's probably going to have a fairly ascendant political career in the next few years, and it's going to stay relevant. And that's a name that I remember the first time I did that, I had to look up. Was it Kamala? Was it Kamala? How do I say this?
Yeah.
So, make sure you get it right. So if you're not sure, get it right. But if it's if it's a very bizarre name or something that's not someone prominent, the client should give you a pronunciation guide on that. If it's lots and lots of very difficult terminology, especially if you're getting into something that an educated layman wouldn't understand, if you're doing e-learning or something like that, go ahead and do your best. I wouldn't spend an hour researching that. And again, a good client should give you a pronunciation guide. But it's on a job-to-job basis. For big jobs, really do your due diligence. For those $300 online casting jobs that are going to be a one-off, do the best you can, but don't obsess.
Yeah. And do you have sort of like benchmarks in terms of how much time you spend for something like one of those quick, online casting jobs, and then something like, a more in-depth, really great agency job?
Yeah, with the online stuff, I'm not going to waste more than 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I mean,
That's what I was thinking too.
There are jobs from online casting sites that are worth spending more than 5 minutes on.
Right.
But again, for that boilerplate $300 one-off job, that's going to be 5 minutes or less. Again, for the big national campaign from an agency, look, I've been doing this for a while, and my time's probably going to be less than the average bear on that. But I might take 8 to 10 minutes on something like that. Which will be roughly double what I do on a average online casting audition, as I just, we'll probably do 2 or 3 takes. We'll be very careful to make sure I'm comfortable with the reads that I'm sending in, because if you're doing agency work, when you're getting into the big league stuff, the competition is really fierce for those jobs, especially if it's going out to a lot of different agents. And so you have to be that one person that just rises above the rest. So take your time and make sure you do it right.
Yeah. And it's definitely, I think it's a good point just to reiterate that it really is dependent on the situation, how big of a job this is. And I've heard varying opinions. I agree with you in terms of the times that you put out. But I've heard varying opinions of people even saying sometimes spend a half an hour on audition. And to me, that's, I think that's almost a bit extreme. But if it's a really, really great job from an agency and, it's something that you really feel is a good fit for you and you could really nail it, then spend the time. And you could do some research even. Sometimes what I'll do is, if the direction I feel is a little lacking, I might go on YouTube and try to find some other commercials in this campaign or just some other recent spots from that company, just sort of get a feel for the tone and the vibe and stuff like that. And, if you start doing that kind of stuff and you reread the script a few times and you recorded different takes, then you edit it. Yeah, I could see it getting maybe 20, 30 minutes at that point. But
I would throw out there that if you're taking 30 minutes or much longer to do auditions, some more coaching is probably in order, and also some more confidence building is probably in order. You need to be able to make a decision and stick with it, because when you get into a session, the client's going to direct you and they're going to move you into different places, but you've got to project confidence in your reads. Yep. There's nothing worse than being in a session and seeming hesitant or unsure of yourself, because we're doing such an esoteric job here that we're charging a lot of money for, that the moment that you give away your agency or your authority in the booth, if you're being live directed, you're dead meat, because all of a sudden that client's not going to respect your value anymore.
Yeah. Good point. So there you go, Tim. I think that's a pretty good overview and answer to your question. So let's move on to our audio question. So our audio question comes from Marie, and she asks, should I be delivering just the raw audio, or should I be doing some sort of post-processing before delivering an audition or a project? So what's your take on that?
That's a broader question than it looks like. Actually, in a perfect world, you should be delivering just the raw audio. Obviously accounting for mouth noise, editing any mouth noise that's really prevalent. Maybe reducing breaths a little bit if they're particularly obtrusive. Although you don't want to cut all the breaths out because then it doesn't sound natural.
Yeah.
So there's a judgment involved in that process. But in an ideal world, if your studio is well treated, or your space is well treated, if your gear is up to par, your raw audio should be good enough. That being said, from the do as I say, not as I do department, I do add a little EQ and a little compression, but I know what I'm doing. And my sincere advice is that if you are not a qualified audio engineer, if you don't know exactly what you're doing when you're adding post-processing, then don't. Just go ahead and send it as is. If you want to split the difference on that, get with one of the tech experts out there. There are a lot of them. Have them build you a stack of effects and processing based upon what your raw audio sounds like that they think is going to be appropriate for auditions. That's a service a lot of them provide. I'm not going to throw names out there because I'll forget somebody and somebody will get mad at me. But that's another step, another road that you can go down, is getting an effect stack built for you by someone who knows how to do that. But ideally, your raw audio should be good enough that with just a little bit of editing, that should work.
Yeah, agree. And that's a good point. Just to reiterate again, is unless you really know what you're doing, or you had a chain set up by somebody who does, it's definitely possible to do more harm than good if you start playing around with all that EQ compression and even beyond that. So the focus really should be on your raw audio, your space that you're recording in, your setup, your chain, and your mic technique, and try to get everything good at the source. And if that's the case, then you shouldn't need much more. And as you progress and stuff, if you want to take some time and learn a little bit about engineering and just add that to your skill set, it's a great way to just advance and take your audio and your voiceover career further.
Absolutely,
I think. Yeah,
absolutely.
So moving on to our business question. Our business question comes from Bill, and he asks, I'm always seeking additional help with marketing. Is there a system or format that you recommend? What are some good practices for staying in touch with clients and prospects? So that's a good one. What's your take on that one?
There's all kinds of advice on this out there. I'll tell you what I do, and then I'll tell you what what I found some of my students have found effective over the years as well. I'm fortunate to be in a position where I don't have to do a lot of actual cold marketing these days. If I were doing more of it, I would really be heavily focusing on making contacts with production companies and then secondarily ad agencies. The third pillar of that might be cold calling actual potential clients. That's going to be low return. But if you do get somebody who bites on a cold call, then they're likely to become a loyal client for you. Mm-hmm. That being said, production companies and ad agencies, unlike talent agents, they don't typically have contact information for voice talent on their pages saying, if you'd like to be on our roster, please submit.
Right.
A few do, but most of them don't.
Yeah, I've seen a couple, but not many. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the minority. Yeah. So you're going to want to, number one, if you can get on their website, if they happen to post email addresses of contacts at the company, trying to intuit which one of them might be the person responsible for hiring talent based upon whatever titles that they've listed. If you see anything that says casting, jump on that.
Yep.
But and usually things that have production in the title.
Executive producer is a good one. Creative director is a good one.
Exactly. Yeah. So try and intuit who the person to contact is at that company. A cold email submission is a good place to start, and it should be short but sweet. I'm a professional talent. I'm a professional voice actor. Some of my credits include, and I like recent credits. So if I'm pitching a production company or an ad agent or even a talent agent, one of the things that I always like to do is say, I know that this is a what have you done for me lately business. So my credits in the last quarter include, and then I'll list as many big names as I possibly can
that's
on
a good
there,
tip.
as long as I'm not under NDA. Again, recent credits, if you've got them. If you can't go recent, then just say my credits include and give them as many as you've got. If you're interested in further discussion, my demos are attached for your consideration. I don't want to oversaturate a production company or ad agency with demos when I first send that email, so I'll attach a few to the email. I'll also put a link. I mean, I've got the VoiceZam link on my my email signature, so I say you can also click on any of the buttons below my signature to listen to that particular demo. But I'll attach my primary one, so maybe a commercial, either promo or TV narration, and then one of my narration demos. When I do a submission to them, maybe I'll put a zip file in there with all of the rest of them if they want to listen to other things. Don't make it complicated. Don't make it more than a paragraph and a half or 2 paragraphs that they have to read. Short but sweet. If you're interested in further conversation, please contact me or please reply to this message, whatever it may be. Thank you for your time and consideration. Your name. If that doesn't work, and again, if they don't have an email address, then the contact form on the webpage is also a potential starting point. I always try and want to go with an electronic communication before I follow up with a phone call, because phone calls get reacted to one of 2 ways. Either they're really interested and they think it's cool that a voice actor is calling them, or you are a telemarketer.
Yeah.
And it's one or the
true.
other.
Yeah.
Because it's so hit and miss, and when it's miss, it's a big miss. I try and soft roll it a little bit with an electronic connection first. But if you don't get a response, follow up with a phone call. You're liable to get Cindy in reception, and if you do, then just ask who the person is who is responsible for casting within the company. Explain who you are, and again, they'll either tell you to get lost, or they'll give you somebody's name or somebody's voicemail, or connect you to somebody. At which point, in any of this, the question that you really want to ask if you get somebody on the phone is, can I send you my demo?
Yeah.
If you get to the point where you can ask the question, can I send you my demo? Most of the time they're going to say yes. And once you have the demo in their hands, it often gets a listen. If it's a good demo, you're going to have a pretty good chance of getting on their roster. A cool thing with production companies and ad agencies is if they're casting in-house, those particular kinds of companies are usually casting off of a relatively small roster. To give you guys an idea of what I mean, my booking ratio with agents is about 2%. Okay, that's actually not a bad booking ratio with agents. It's about 2%. My booking ratio with online casting is 7 to 10% on a given week. My booking ratio with production companies and ad agencies is about 25%. And the reason is that if I get an audition from a production company or an ad agency, I'm usually only going up against 5 or 6 other talent that fit that spec, and maybe they don't all fit it as well as I do, because they've curated a list of people that they want to work with. So while it takes a little more legwork to get on those rosters, it's a good place to be. I will tell you a couple of tricks that I do use on a regular basis, which I like to think don't smell as much like marketing, or at least create such a positive impression and impact that it's very positive marketing. One is I travel with some frequency. And so every month I will send out a travel advisory to my entire client list for the following month, letting them know the days that I'm not going to be available, and asking them to submit any projects that they've got of X length by such a day, or of Y length by an earlier day, in order to avoid disappointment, so that I can get that to them before I go. I tend not to travel with a travel rig unless I'm gone for a week or longer, because I tried to bring my rig to my honeymoon, and that was almost the shortest marriage that you've ever seen. Since then, I've been a little bit more attuned to quality of life when I travel.
Sure, yeah.
So I tell my clients when I'm not going to be available. What that does, though, it looks like I'm doing a favor for them. It doesn't look like I'm marketing to them, and I am telling them
staying on the
information
radar.
that they need. Yeah, but I every time I send that email, I book 3 or 4 jobs that I would not have booked otherwise. Wow. Because I will get a client who's been dormant for 2 years who will see that email and respond and say, "Oh, yeah, well, thanks for letting me know, but actually we do have something coming up. I'm glad you contacted us, because we haven't thought about you in a while. And would you like to do this? And every time I send that email, I book 3 or 4 jobs within about 48 hours off of that email. So that's been pretty effective. The other thing that I do is I take care of my clients. And what I mean by that is I do it for New Year's because I want to be politically correct and look at everybody's sensibilities. So the first of the year, everybody who's hired me over the year gets a handwritten card, regardless of how much they've spent. If they've spent $1,000 or more, they're going to get a $50 Godiva gift basket. If they've spent $5,000 or more, that Godiva gift basket then includes a bottle of champagne and a few other little accoutrements.
Nice.
And that's probably about a $250 item. If they've spent $10,000 or more, then I start throwing in Ocetra caviar, and it's Dom Perignon or Krug instead of Moet. And that's a $500 or $600 gift basket. The reason that I do this, and I budget money for this every year, and the reason that I do this is because if it's Linda in HR who's casting me, okay, most of the people hiring you do not hire you for themselves. They're hiring you with somebody else's money, okay? And Linda in HR, when March comes around and the boss comes down and says, hey, why don't we go with a female voice this year? Or we're getting kind of tired of that Collins guy. How about somebody younger? She's going to remember that champagne and chocolate, and she's going to say, well, we're pretty happy with him. He's reliable. Why don't we stick with him for another year?
Yeah.
It's something, if you go to a hotel and they give you a big suite and you've booked a normal room, you remember that. If you fly on an airline and you bought a coach ticket and they upgrade you to first class and give you a glass of champagne, you remember that. You want to fly that airline again. You want to be in that hotel again.
It's good customer
This is
service.
no different.
Yeah.
Good. It's not just good customer service, but treat your customers the way that you would want to be treated in a similar situation. And not just that, there's a word that they use in the service industry to describe this. You don't just want to satisfy your customers. You want to delight them. If you delight a customer, they won't forget it.
Yeah. It's true. I live in New York, so there's a million pizza places, and there's this one that I've been going to for like 4 or 5 years. And when I go there, the guy gives me a free slice, like pretty much every time I go there. So even though I have a choice of over 100 pizza places I can go to, where do you think I go every single time and go back to the same place? Yep. It's good business. And it makes sense. And it's, you could think of it as marketing, and it's just you got to stay on people's radar. You got to stay, keep that good relationship going, especially once you establish it. Repeat work and long-term client relationships, that's the name of the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. That's all really, really great stuff. So yeah, let's move on now to our mock auditions for this week. So this week's audition was for Morning Delight Coffee, which was sort of an upbeat, fun, friendly, sort of, boilerplate commercial. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play the audition from our winner and also from a runner-up. And then me and J.Michael will both sort of comment on what we liked and didn't like about them. And then also I'll play you a finished produced version of this so you can hear what these auditions would sound like in the context of a finished spot. And if anybody wants to sort of, use this for practice, the actual music bed and the sound effects will be available in the show notes, so you can actually download it, throw your own audition on top of it if you were somebody who submitted, or if you didn't, the script will be there. Feel free to, take a stab at it and see how you stack up. So our winning audition for this week comes from Peter Stern, and I'll let you take a listen to Peter's audition, and then you'll hear what me and J.Michael have to say about it. So without further ado, here's the winning audition for Morning Delight Coffee, and this is from Peter Stern.
Mornings don't have to be a struggle against the alarm clock. When you have the smooth, rich and delicious taste of Morning Delight Coffee waiting for you to get out of bed, you'll be up and at 'em in no time. Made with 100% organic Colombian-grown coffee beans, Morning Delight will put you well on your way to ensuring that not only your morning, but your entire day is delightful. Morning Delight Coffee, available at a grocer near you.
Cool. So J.Michael, you want to take the first shot at this?
Yeah, well, my first reaction is it's not fair when there's a British guy in there.
There is something about that. I agree.
Remember I talked about the old days, how we would go in and actually audition in person? And if they were considering British talent, if I walked into a room and there were British guys in there, I'd leave. because if you're considering British, you're going to go with British because it's
Yeah.
just, as an American, it just sounds like such a lovely, sophisticated, intelligent accent, and so you got an advantage there. But no, it was a good read. I think that it was an interesting read in that it combined elements of a smile while still somehow retaining a little bit of a reserved authority and there was a credibility to it that was distinct. Again, maybe it's the British thing a little bit, but it had the smile on it. It was a technically very good read. The emphasis and the inflection were in the right place. It was. I think it was a by the book, comfortable textbook quality VO read. Again, now if I'm in a if this is 50 people I'm listening to, Peter, could you have done something a little more fun somewhere? Maybe. But it's a solid read, and I'm certainly in agreement with Michael that this was the best of the bunch.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. There's nice energy in it, without being too flat, a little too casual. He didn't let it get boring or monotonous, which I liked. I agree with you. There maybe was some spots where, like we were talking about before, he maybe could have took some risks or, tried something a little bit different. It was kind of by the books, but it worked. And I liked it as well. I thought he also had some nice finality on that tagline. He didn't sometimes you might hear a tagline that sounds like, oh, is that the end or is there more to come? He wrapped it up and it sounded, you felt that, we were at the end when he read that line, which I liked as well.
Absolutely.
But great. Yeah. So that was a great read, Peter. And we'll show you the final produced version in a second. But before we do that, let's just take a listen to our runner-up, which was Debbie Feldman.
Mornings don't have to be a struggle against the alarm clock. When you have the smooth, rich, and delicious taste of Morning Delight coffee waiting for you to get out of bed, you'll be up and at 'em in no time. Made with 100% organic Colombian-grown coffee beans, Morning Delight will put you well on your way to ensuring that not only your morning, but your entire day is delightful. Morning Delight coffee, available at a grocer near you.
Yes, what are your thoughts on this one?
Again, I think it's a safe read. I think it's a textbook read in many cases, and there's something to be said for that. We're doing things here that you're taught to do, and that kind of check all of the boxes in terms of again the voiceover academy list of am I doing it right? That I like. Smile, some sunshine on the read, which is good. Maybe wavered a little bit in places on that, but for the most part, it was a positive read. One or two inflections could have been placed a little bit better, especially towards the end. If I listen again to
ensuring that not only your morning, but your entire day is delightful.
Maybe a little bit too much of a rise on that line into your entire day is delightful coming up. The entire day to me would have been the focus of that line as opposed to delightful. Earlier in the read, the word 100 was a bit under enunciated. I picked up on that to where it sounded more like 100 as opposed to 100. It's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine because even if you get into a more casual read, 100 just sounds under enunciated. It sounds a little lazy mouth, but on the whole, it's a good, bright read. It's I always like to slot reads that I hear into where do they go into the marketplace, and this is a read that in a major union setting with a big agent might not quite get there. On online casting for a decent job could be competitive if nobody put everything together and again maybe did something a little outside the box to bring some more life to it. It's a competitive read in a vacuum with the possibility to improve a little bit, but it's a very good effort. It's a great way to put it. Competitive read in a vacuum. I would have liked maybe a little bit more energy and emotion in it. Like you said, the inflection at parts, or the smile was there, but at parts we lost it a little bit. So it kind of went away. So I think I would have liked to hear just a little bit more, of that throughout the case. Audio wise, it's competitive. It wasn't bad. Maybe I nitpick on this kind of stuff, but I think I would have liked it to be a little bit tighter and more upfront sounding. There was
bit of maybe roominess or hollowness.
There was a little echo in there.
Yeah.
And that is something, I wasn't going too much into the audio quality of these reads, but Debbie, that is something that
it's worth looking at.
It's definitely worth looking at. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the final line, sort of like I had mentioned with Peter's audition, he had some nice finality on it and wrapped it up. Hers, I felt like could have used a little bit more of that, available at a grocer near you. I feel like we could have really hit that a little bit stronger as the end. I almost kind of felt with hers like there's still something coming, or are we caught at the end yet? But just
close it out.
Taglines. Yeah. Taglines, it's nice to kind of really solidly hit that and close things out. Obviously, unless the client says, read it this way, read it that way, then that's what you do. But overall, very nice read. So now what I'll do is I'll just play for you the produced versions of these so you can sort of hear what this audition would sound like in the context of a final spot, if this was really used in a project with music, sound effects. And this is a great way to sort of really hear if you hit the tone of something, if you got enough energy, or if you're too flat, if you're too much energy. It's nice to sort of put things into context as opposed to just listening to a plain voice read on its own. So what I'll do for you now is play Peter's read and play Debbie's read so you can hear them in context.
Mornings don't have to be a struggle against the alarm clock. When you have the smooth, rich and delicious taste of morning delight coffee waiting for you to get out of bed, you'll be up and at 'em in no time. Made with 100% organic Colombian-grown coffee beans, Morning Delight will put you well on your way to ensuring that not only your morning, but your entire day is delightful. Morning Delight Coffee, available at a grocer near you.
Mornings don't have to be a struggle against the alarm clock. When you have the smooth, rich, and delicious taste of Morning Delight coffee waiting for you to get out of bed, you'll be up and at 'em in no time. Made with 100% organic Colombian-grown coffee beans, Morning Delight will put you well on your way to ensuring that not only your morning, but your entire day is delightful. Morning Delight Coffee, available at a grocer near you.
So there you go. So there are Peter and Debbie's reads, both in a fully produced version. So that is going to close things out for this episode of the VoiceOver Roadmap podcast. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest co-host today, J.Michael Collins. Just really a ton of great value, ton of great information. J.Michael, is there anything else that you would like to mention? Anything you'd like to share with people about anything you have coming up, or just any other tips, or just anything you want to say to close things out?
Oh, I hate to beat my chest and promote stuff. So if you're interested in coaching or demos or my workshops, visit my website, jmcvoiceover.com. Other than that, thanks for being here. Michael, thank you for being a fantastic host. And to all of you who submitted auditions, thanks for taking the time. It was a pleasure to listen. And congrats to Peter and Debbie as the runner-up. Good job.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And links to everything will be in the show notes. You'll have links there to find all of J.Michael's information, his website and everything will be there as well. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And again, yes, congratulations to Peter and Debbie, and thank you to everybody else who submitted an audition as well. Really appreciate it. So that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much again, J.Michael, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening and for tuning into this episode. And again, thank you so much to J.Michael for providing just so much great information on the show. If you would like more information about the upcoming workshop tour that J.Michael is doing, or his coaching or demo production services, links to all of that can be found in the show notes at voiceoverroadmap.com/002. So head on over there, check that stuff out. And again, if you'd like to submit a question for a future episode of the show, you can do that at voiceoverroadmap.com/questions. And if you like this episode and you like the show, please go ahead and subscribe and review it on iTunes. That'd be really great and go a long way to getting the show out there. You can also check out the show on YouTube or just on the VoiceOver Roadmap website. Thanks so much again for listening. Really hope you enjoyed this episode. And we'll see you soon in episode 3.